We close out Week 10 of the NFL season on a Monday night matchup with two teams going in opposite directions. The Rams are getting healthy, and they've won 3 in a row. Can they do this season what they did a year ago when they scampered back into the postseason? Then there's the Dolphins. They've lost 3 in a row despite getting their quarterback back, and they have other health issues. And the numbers suggest this might not be a good night for Tua to cover. We'll explain it all as we envelop you with information. It's the Pregame PowerUp, and it starts now. SoFi, the place to be tonight. The Rams 3-1 at home this season, looking to win their 4th straight game and keep pace in a tight NFC West and keep pace with those red-hot Arizona Cardinals and the suddenly healthy San Francisco 49ers. That is something we haven't been able to say all season long. And with that, we welcome you into another edition of the Pregame PowerUp on DraftKings Network, presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Bellafato. Emerson Lazia will join us in one of the most Emerson Lazia things you will ever experience in your entire life. Marshall Newhouse will join us as well to help break down what we expect tonight and talk about some of the weird things we saw on Sunday. And where is it worse, the Jets or the Cowboys? And believe me, there's good evidence for both.
It's a hard question.
We'll get into all of that later. But again, it's the Monday night matchup. What are the numbers you're seeing heading right before kickoff?
Yeah, you talked about injury off the top. So Tyreek Hill, of course, is going to be the one injury we are taking note of. We'll keep you updated throughout the show. Rams opened a 3-point favorite. This got as low as 1. Now we're seeing it hang around 2.5. Resistance at 3. We always talk about the key numbers of 3 and 7. So resistance at that key number of 3. Total opened 49.5. We saw it get up to as high as 51. A little buyback down to 48.5, 49 bouncing around there. We're seeing 48.5 right now. Heavy money bets on the Rams. We'll get into the betting split specifically, but you mentioned it. It's not surprising that that's the case. The Rams 3 straight wins. Sean McVay doesn't really lose as a favorite. Another trend we'll get into. The trend's not loving Tua. The pressure on Tua having one of the quickest releases is going to be a key matchup, which I'll get into later on. But the Tyreek Hill injury certainly will have a major impact on the Dolphins.
Trust me, you're going to see Claudia break down the
Tua
injury.
Next gen, baby.
It is a work of art. Yeah. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's start about this Rams team because they're doing what they did a year ago. Basically, we're seeing this second half surge. After starting the season 1-4, the Rams have come out of their Week 6 bye with 3 straight wins and have essentially saved their season in the process. It's been a complete reversal for the team since the bye week. A similar story to last season. They started 3-6 and then ripped off 7 straight wins in their final 8 games to finish 10-7 and make the playoffs. And you remember in that playoff game against Detroit, they took the Lions down to the wire. In fact, we're seeing a trend here. Here's a look at numbers pre and post by the last 2 seasons for Sean McVay's team. 4-10 before the bye, 10-1 after. McVay seems to pull all the right strings and push all the right buttons during that midseason break. Points per game up, points allowed down, and a vastly improved turnover margin. Of course, a big reason for their turnaround has been their guys getting healthy. And McVay knows how important that is to his team's success going forward.
Since the bye, our guys there's been some improvement, and now we're starting to get some guys back healthy. Hopefully we can stay healthy, continue to establish an identity. I think we're starting to really get a good feel for what that looks like defensively, and I think we're still, trying to figure that out offensively because of all the moving parts. But this offers an opportunity to say, what a great chance that we have against Miami on Monday night at home. Our guys have done a great job since the bye of being able to win 3 straight. And, the division is tight, but there's still a long, long way to go and a lot of football left, and we're looking forward to Monday night.
A little bounce in his step there with that smile for Sean. Now, here's a look at some of the guys the Rams could get back tonight. The O-line devastated by injuries all season. We talked about that earlier, and they get some key guys back tonight. Steve Avila, Jonah Jackson expected to suit up and be active for Week 10. Joe Noteboom will also suit up for the first time since Week 1, and he could fill in for starting tackle Rob Havenstein, who will not play tonight. Overall, this team will be swapping out 3 starting offensive linemen this week, Claudia, and sometimes that can create some issues.
It can, and issues certainly ahead for Miami as Tyreek Hill reportedly a true game time decision, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. He popped up on the injury report this week with a wrist issue, and he missed the team's final 2 practices. Now, this is an injury he has been dealing with all season long, and it could potentially require surgery. A decision on that could hinge on how the Dolphins do in this game tonight, as they might be more inclined to shut him down if they fall out of contention. And today's First and Trend has a lot to do with Tua and Tua troubles in particular. He is just 1-6 straight up and against the spread in the last 7 starts. 5 straight games against the spread losses at night. So he doesn't play at night. Well, 3-9 overall in his career. 8 straight road losses against teams 500 or better, which he is facing tonight in this Rams squad. But it's interesting because if you look at Tua's numbers, it's not like he's performed terribly. He's looked pretty good despite the losses. 2 games since returning from a concussion, he's got a passer rating of 111.2. He's thrown 3 touchdowns, no picks, and his 80% completion percentage trailed only Jared Goff across weeks 8 and 9. But at the end of the day, it's been 2 losses for the quarterback and his coach.
He's trying to be great. He's not trying to relieve himself of burden or stress. You know, if he as the quarterback, he looks at it like the stat that is next to his name is the win or loss. So when you lose, what could I have done better? And I think that's as the franchise quarterback, you need him to be that way if you're going to expect others to be that way.
I think it starts in practice and how we prepare with conversations you have as a leader of the defense, as a leader of the offense, as a leader of the team, having those conversations with the guys of what the expectation is and continuing to harp on the guys to stay in it, stay in it. We could be 1 game away from going on a streak and, hopefully turning this whole thing around.
He is too legit to quit. The numbers don't lie. You can see the drastic difference in the offense without Tua under center, and with him, they go from over 20 points a game to just 10. 100 less yards of total offense, which is basically coming entirely from the lack of a passing attack when he's out. But the wins haven't been there either way, and that's been the story for this team this season. And if they don't have Tyreek Hill tonight, they could be in big trouble.
What Tua said there was really fascinating because that's the thing that people look at when they talk about quarterbacks that they sort of gloss over, and it's the ability to lead, the ability to get this thing. We can do all the numbers and all this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you need to know that guy who is going to be pulling the trigger on every offensive play, you believe in him and he believes in you. And this season, we've obviously seen Tua deal with some real life stuff that has made him think about life beyond football. And so that's sort of where I think this thing is going and why he's maybe had not the greatest situation since he's come back, despite the numbers. Okay, for more on this, let's go to the DraftKings trading floor in Las Vegas, talk to our own Stormy Buonantony. Stormy, Claudia talked about it at the top of the show. This line's sort of been all over the place. 4, down to 1, settling in about 2.5. Where are the bettors backing right now?
Yeah, as Claudia referenced, it's mostly money coming in on the Rams. We're seeing 76% of the handle, 79% of bets, all coming in on Los Angeles to win this game by a field goal or more. And I think you guys put it well. These are 2 teams that appear on the surface to be trending in different directions. Even with the Dolphins in their last 2 games since Tua has been back, having down-to-the-wire contest decided by a field goal against 2 teams that we think are pretty good right now. Like the Arizona Cardinals aren't a team we laugh at anymore. Buffalo obviously is legit. But still a team that on the surface is reeling, dropping 3 straight games against a Rams team that's riding a 3-game win streak and getting healthier up front and in the receiving game with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both available here. So most of the money coming in on the Rams, but a contrarian play on Miami if the Dogs continue to bark like they have in Week 10. Underdogs 10-3 against the spread so far.
It's certainly good value on Miami if Tyreek Hill does play. Now, he's one of the only players outside of the quarterback position, Stormy, that really has a major impact on a line or a total, and we have been seeing this total drop from where it got to as high as 51. What does the action really look like, and how much do you think it's related to Tyreek Hill's health here?
Yeah, I'm sure that it is related, right? Because you think about how Tyreek Hill, for example, was impacted when Tua Tagovailoa wasn't available. I think a lot of people think similarly that Tua's success is very much so tied to that of Tyreek Hill. So if he's not available today, what ultimately is that going to look like? I personally didn't have a strong feel one way or the other on the total in terms of the bets that we're seeing in this game. 74% of the bets coming in are on the over at that 48.5. I personally think a better bet, or at least a more intriguing one, might actually be the Rams team total over. If you're questioning maybe what these defenses are going to do, you got to pay a little bit of juice because the team total for Los Angeles is at 23.5, but Miami giving up 27 points in each of their last 2 games. And you think about, again, all of the offensive talent that is healthy now for Los Angeles, with whether it's Kupp, Nakua, even just Kyren Williams and the nose he's had for the first down marker, the nose he's had for the end zone. I like them to be able to score points. Their defense even has scored in 4 consecutive games with either a defensive touchdown or a safety. And real quickly on Kyren Williams, if anybody out there is looking for a little fun pizza money bet, plus 165 on him to score the first Rams touchdown today. He scored the first touchdown for the team in 7 of their 8 games so far this season, and getting a plus money price on him to do it again seems like a fun bet.
If you don't want a fun bet for pizza money, I don't want to know you personally. I mean, there's nothing wrong with pizza ever. What are we looking at prop bet wise for Tua here? Like, where are we seeing the numbers in his 3rd game back that we might see them grow?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's not been a ton of play on Tua Tagovailoa one way or the other. And specifically when you look at his passing yards, these 2 games since he's been back, he's been in that 230s range for passing yards, but the prop set for tonight is 247.5. And typically when there is a really strong opinion on a side, when we look at these betting splits, it's in the 90+ percentages, just about 78% on the over his yards tonight. The majority of money that we're seeing on a prop with Tua is actually his passing touchdowns over 1.5. You are seeing it up in that 90s in that standpoint. So bettors think it's more likely for him to have 2+ touchdowns tonight than for him to go over the yards.
Taking a look at the defense for Miami, Jalen Ramsey returning to LA, his former squad. He's leading this Miami defense right now, allowing the 4th fewest passing yards to wide receivers. Only 2 receivers have hit the over 100 receiving yard mark against this squad. How are people betting Kupp and Nakua? Because they're not just any wide receivers. They're 2 of the best, Stormy.
They are not. And I saw these same numbers that you did, Claudia, so I got digging into the schedule a little bit here for Miami. While, yes, those pass defense numbers seem great on the surface, right? Mm-hmm. You also have to take into account who they're playing. Miami has only played 1 passing offense, that's ranked in the top 12 this season. Meanwhile, 2 passing offenses in the Titans and Patriots that they face are actually the bottom 2 passing games in the league right now. So when you put all of that together, you look at some of the PFF grades in their pass defense ranking 28th, pass defense DVOA 27th. I think there's some opportunity here for Matthew Stafford to get the ball out to his wide receivers. From the market perspective, Puka Nakua is getting a lot more of that love than Cooper Kupp because, to your point about Jalen Ramsey, who has been playing great, more than likely he's going to be getting the bulk of that matchup. So we're seeing 97% of the money on the over 68.5 receiving yards for Puka Nakua. His over 5.5 receptions is actually a top 5 bet prop tonight. Meanwhile, just 64% of the money on the over for Cooper Kupp specifically.
All right, we talked about the numbers and what the Rams did last season and how, as we said, they won 3 in a row. They're trending again to make that late season run and get to the postseason. But this is a very different NFC West we're looking at this season. San Francisco is finally rounding into form, and Arizona is on an absolute roll. Kyler Murray just set a franchise record for the fewest incompletions in a game in their destruction of the Jets. And the Seahawks are still sort of there. So what do we think about the betting line in terms of these Rams team getting on a run like they did a year ago and getting back into the postseason?
I like that. Sort of there is a good way.
It's the best way to describe it. I mean, they show up and sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't.
No question about it. But Arizona, to your point, is actually the favorite in the NFC West right now, leapfrogging San Francisco, who's the 2nd shot. The Rams there is the 3rd shot. And it's a really interesting division. You're getting plus 230 right now on the Rams to make the playoffs if you think that they can make a push like they did last year. And when you look at what the market was doing last season, the back end of the year, because weird things do happen with those division games and teams trying to make a playoff push, Going into their Week 13 win against the Browns, they were about plus 200 in the market to make the postseason. By the time we got to Week 16, they were a $3 favorite. So if you're a believer in the Rams, like some people are, DraftKings over the last couple weeks took a $1,000 bet for them to win the Super Bowl at 70-1, would pay out $70,000. Another $5,000 bet was on the division as well. So some people are buying in. It's just a matter of what you guys think.
All right, Stormy, thanks. Lots more coming, including how one rookie has Rams fans forgetting all about the retirement of Aaron Donald. We're going next-gen stats on this game when we come back. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Welcome back to the Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. So the Rams pulled off that OT win over the Seahawks last week, 26-20, thanks in a large part to their rookies on defense. Third-round pick Cameron Kinchins had 2 picks in the fourth quarter. Jared Verse, and Braden Fisk each had 1 sack and 6 quarterback pressures. The Rams used 5 of their first 6 picks of the 2024 draft on defense, and it is paying off big time for them already. But don't believe me, just look at the numbers. Verse specifically has been outstanding and is currently a heavy favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He leads all rookies with 39 quarterback pressures and 3.5 sacks this season. Verse isn't focused on any individual awards, though, just improving every week, something his starting quarterback has noticed.
Not at all. No, I'm focused on the next game. I don't care about any awards, anything. That all come with how I play and if I do the things I'm meant to do.
I just think about Verse's first couple of practice here, in OTAs with no pads on. He's running over people, and we're trying to teach him how to, practice with our own team and do all that kind of stuff. And the growth that he's had has been amazing to watch and see. And, I think there's a bunch of young guys on our team that are growing up quickly and doing a good job of it.
Let's dive a bit deeper into Jared Verse's numbers, courtesy of Next Gen Stats. Now, he's an outside linebacker, but we see him lined up at defensive end more often than not. And look at these numbers when he's been paired up with Braden Fisk. They've combined to generate 64 pressures this season, the most by any rookie duo through 9 weeks of the past 7 seasons. Remember retired Aaron Donald? He averaged about 38 pressures through the first 9 weeks of the season. In each of his final 5 on the squad, Jared Verse 39 right now. Now, this is going to be key because they're going up against Tua Tagovailoa, who has seen the lowest pressure rate in the league, just 20.3% of his dropbacks, due in a large part to his league quickest time to throw at just 2.39 seconds. This defense, while they are generating the pressure, they have allowed the second most yards per attempt on throws under 2.5 seconds this season. Tyreek Hill, one of the guys that really benefits from that quick release. We see him leading this receiving core that has benefited as a whole with Tua on the field, the 3rd most yards after the catch per reception in the league at 7.1, with 4 plays of 20 or more air yards after the catch. Tyreek Hill in particular, his yak goes from 7.4 to 2.9 without him, so certainly a matchup to look out for tonight.
Claudia thinks that was masterful, and maybe no one benefits more than running Devin Achane from all of this. Last week against the Bills, Achane rushed for 12 times, 63 yards, and caught 8 passes for 58 yards. He also had a season-high 2 scrimmage touchdowns. So take a look at his numbers this season with and without Tua Tagovailoa under center. In 4 games with his quarterback, he's averaging 133.3 scrimmage yards, 70 rushing yards, and 63 passing yards. In all other games, just 35 rushing yards, 12 receiving yards, and 0 touchdowns. Claudia talked about the short passing game being a key to the Dolphins' strategy tonight, and Tua said as much in his press conference this week.
Yeah, that's been really effective these past couple weeks for us offensively, and I think what helps with that is the run game. We've been doing really well in our run game, and I think going into this week, it'll definitely help with the front that they have. They got some good guys in the front end and in the back end, and we'll see how they come out and play us, and then we'll adjust from there.
Well, here's what the props look like for Achane tonight. Rushing yards and receiving yards below his season averages with Tua under center. Achane has hit the over on receiving yards and receptions in each of the games that Tua has started. He's also gone over his rushing yard prop in 3 of the 4 games that Tua has been there, Claudia.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a prop a lot of people are looking at tonight. Let's look how the public is betting the sides and the totals specifically. Like I said at the top of the show, we are seeing some money. 76% of the bets on the Rams to cover. As far as money goes, though, almost 80% of the handle. The over is seeing 62% of the bets, even more so when it comes to the handle, 75%. Waddle's seeing a lot when it comes to a prop, 42 in the hook set for his receiving yard, 95% of the bets on the over, and 99% of the handle. For more on the action DraftKings is taken tonight, here's our anonymous sportsbook informant, Captain Book.
It's Monday, baby, and the fish are back in prime time. Miami may kick off as a 3-point dog, but if NFL puppies keep looking this cute, somebody's going to have to call Ace Ventura. After last week's public Play-Doh party, where favorites went 14-1 straight up, the captain decided to call up the Kennel Club. NFL dogs are 10-3 this week against the spread, with 5 straight-up wins. Can Miami turn SoFi into SeaWorld tonight? Public bettors believe laying the wood with the Rams is the right play in this spot, and sharp bettors agree. And why not? So-so Matt Stafford finally has his Cooper Hockey Cup back in place, and if Ty the Guy Williams and the Hawaiian Kalua Puka Nakua can punch in a few sweet rolls in the red zone, then the Rams will be rolling. Can Hawk Tua finally deliver for the Dolphins under the lights? You better believe the captain's counting on it. Oh, righty then.
All right, Captain Book, thanks very much. And here's the breaking news about Tyreek Hill. Adam Schefter reporting that Lisa Salters is telling him that Tyreek Hill will be available tonight. He was listed as questionable. He is active with that wrist injury, so expect him to be on the field. And obviously, that is very good news if you're a Miami Dolphins fan, and it changes how you might look at the numbers with the full complement out there.
Yeah, his props were up too, and I think the this news was sort of baked into the line to begin with, but now everybody can sigh of relief for Miami fans.
It's baked in now. You can just smell it. You can
it's out of the
smell it
oven
all
now.
coming from that pie as it's baked into. All right, we'll get to the Tua side of this and the Tyreek in a minute. But for more on this game tonight, let's bring in our big man, the resident big man, Marshall Newhouse. Played his college ball at TCU, 11 seasons in the NFL. I always say this, Marshall. You've heard me say it. You don't know don't have an offensive line until you need one, and we saw that was a huge issue for the Rams to start the season. How important is it getting these guys back to what they want to do going forward down the stretch?
Yeah, listen, it's huge. As many plays as Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua went to their availability have been making, he's also been getting hit a lot in the pocket, and that alters this offense a lot. They like to take shots out of the play action game and just a drop back game in general. And the fact that they're on a 4-game winning streak without those guys in the lineup and now they're getting them back bodes really well, especially against a Miami defense that is 22nd in pressure rate. So expect for him to have a lot more time in the pocket tonight, but it also helps having familiarity. Steve Avila coming back, who people remember last year was a guard and is now a center. So that's a guy Matthew Stafford's going to be taking snaps from again, and just a more sense of comfort for your quarterback.
So it seems like good injury news sort of all around. I just broke down this Rams defense and how they've been relying on 2 rookies, and that's the key here. They've needed 2 guys to really replace what Aaron Donald did in his time with the Rams. How impressed are you by this Rams defense, and how much more of this can we expect?
Listen, it's incredible to kind of try to replace that production, but I want to dissuade anyone of thinking that they're getting the same kind of gravity that Aaron Donald gave this team. He's maybe the greatest of all time inside. He'll be talked about as he should be. And so Les Snead did an incredible job. I think he hit 2 triples. We'll see if they're home runs in drafting Fisk and Jared Verse. They're producing so much for rookies. They're getting a lot of pressure. Verse off the edge he's crippling a lot of these tackles. And so they're giving you a lot more than I think they even expected from those guys. But in no way, shape, or form are you replacing that kind of production. But I still think their total defense has taken a step up because they've got more production on the linebacker and on the back end in their secondary. And so this team is rounding out into a more complete team because of the defense production.
Marshall, I'm so glad you said that about Aaron, because when he played, nobody was better at what he did by a wider margin than the other players that did what he did than Aaron Donald.
Big gap.
It wasn't even close. You can talk about quarterbacks all you want. Aaron Donald was better at what he did than any other player that did what he did his entire career. Okay, we got the news, as you just heard a few moments ago, that Tyreek is active. He's going to play despite that wrist injury. And this is great news for Miami because Claudia broke it down perfectly earlier. They like to get that ball out so fast, under 2.4 seconds before Tua has that ball out of his hands. So with this Rams defense that we just talked about and those 2 rookies and everybody else out there, how do they try and combat that quick release and get to Tua before he can get to his receivers?
Well, listen, even before Tua was injured, this was their offense. This is what they had built to. Tua was getting the ball out and, a record rate, top 3 in the league consistently. But what that does is allows Miami to use a quick game. They've got this motion, this fly motion outward towards the sideline they like to use, but they turn that into quick screens. They turn that into go balls. But what the quick game does is it turns into an extension of the run game. And then now if a Tua that you can imagine people are sensitive to about him taking hits, being back there too long, that impacts them even more. But it does take pressure off the line. But if you're the defense, you're telling your D-line, hey, sometimes we're going to have to get our hands up. We're not going to get home most of the time, even with as good as Jared Verse is playing. So be aware, get your hands up. And then I think they play a lot more press man than they're normally playing, because at least when the receiver is trying to fight to get off that press, he's having to move sideways a couple times. That's time ticking that Tua has to maybe double pump and triple pump and maybe tuck and ball and run or take a sack. And so you throw that in there just to make their timing just a little bit off. And I think that's the best way you can combat that quick game.
And I am seeing that Adam Schefter tweeted, Tyreek Hill says he has a torn ligament in his wrist, but he's still playing. So we'll see just how effective he can be tonight. I want to talk about the receivers on the other side here. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, of course, they're 2 of the top in the league, but they're facing one of the toughest pass defenses in the NFL in the Dolphins. Now, the good part of this is they have one of the best backs in the league in Kyren Williams. How much do you expect the Rams to lean on him tonight?
Yeah, I think they're going to get the running game going. Having these extra linemen allows them a little bit more push, get Kyron Williams going, maybe get Blake Corum the ball to split these reps a little bit. But what the Rams do so well with their receivers is they insert them into their run game. So Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, now whether you like it or not for their longevity or for their availability, these guys will get dirty. So they'll get down in there, and what that will do eventually is open up the passing game, open up the play action shots. Both these guys are really physical at the point of attack. They're going to get across the field, get their one-on-one matchups, and Stafford's going to have a lot of opportunities tonight. And I think whichever receiver ends up in the slot more often is going to get more of a matchup because Jalen Ramsey on the outside, this Dolphins secondary has been really, really good. So I think the matchups will be in the slot because there's just more room to maneuver.
Yeah, listen, that injury news to Tyreek is not surprising. As you well know, once you get to week 10, everybody's got something pulled, hurt, bruised, broken. Like, you just don't even talk about it. Like Nick Sirianni let out the, oh, yeah, we're resting Jalen Hurts because of his ankle. No, it's just rest. No, it's because he's got an ankle injury. Everybody's nicked up at this point in the season. But let's go back to Tua here for a second because you alluded to it there. Look, this is game 3 of him being back. And when he came back for the first game, I think we all watched like this. You know, we wanted to make sure he wasn't getting hurt and he didn't get hit. And I'm sure some of that felt uncomfortable for him. Now that he's got a couple games under his belt, do we expect to see a little more of the instinctual Tua coming back?
Listen, I think it has to. I mean, whether it happens or not, it has to because a football player at its core has to play kind of with abandon, which Tua has, and you like to think that he's learned from the shots that he's taken. I don't think he has in this short of time, but I think as he gets more confidence, I mean, right there in the Buffalo game, they were right there at the end of the game. That was a very close game. Their defense, I think, kind of let go of the rope more so than the offense. Tua's been playing really well. It feels like his confidence is building. He's kind of shaking off the after effects, even though we might be cringing and wincing when he's running. He's shaking off the effects, and the offense has been pretty effective. But ultimately, they're going to go with third downs and red zone and fourth down decisions. I mean, fourth quarter decisions, excuse me.
Yeah.
And with Tua, I mean, what is he going to do when they're down a couple scores? Is he going to kind of run out there and try to take a guy head on? Is he going to throw in double coverage? And so these are decisions that you hope he's shaking off and you hope that the rest of the offense can recover from. But they've been playing pretty well, so I expect them to do well.
Big implications for tonight. We'll see. They are the underdog in this spot. The Rams under a field goal favorite. Where are you going with it, Marshall?
Give me the Rams at home.
Okay, Marshall Newhouse, we appreciate you. We'll see you in a few more minutes later on in the show. Coming up, it's Mahomes' world, and we're all just living in it.
That's a fact.
But possibly, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay could be just the duo to knock him off the top of the mountain. We'll explain that next on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame PowerUp is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. We continue in the pregame power-up presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Matthew Stafford has been a new man with his favorite receivers back in action. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 288.5 passing yards per game. That is the most in the NFL over the last 2 weeks. He has 6 touchdowns against only 2 interceptions, including that game winner last week in Seattle. He's also taken no sacks over the last 2 games after being sacked almost 3 times per game through the first 6 weeks, and obviously we expect that to be better as well when he gets some of those offensive linemen back. Now tonight, Stafford could pass Eli Manning for the 10th most passing touchdowns in NFL history. Aaron Rodgers is the only active player with more, but that's not the only thing Rodgers and Stafford have in common, and it's something that not many currently in the league have accomplished. For all of us to tie this together, we need one man to put together the clues, and that man is Emerson Latzia.
The Super Bowl winning quarterback, the last of a dying breed. As of right now, there are only 5 starting signal caller species still roaming the earth, all of who have conquered the football universe. Let's take a closer look. The Mahomes, current king of the jungle, aiming to finish atop the food chain for a 3rd straight season. The Stafford, last spotted in 2022. The Wilson, soaring to the top of the mountain 1 decade ago. The Flacco, perched high upon the NFL in 2013. Left for dead, later reincarnated as a colt. Finally, the Rodgers, last emerging from the darkness in 2011. His time roaming the championship realm may be over. Safari theme aside, though, 2 of these quarterbacks weren't even starters when this season was born. Some say there's really no substitute for experience. A desirable feature, yes. If you take out Mahomes, these quarterbacks have experience in spades. The average age for Matt, Russ, Joe, and Aaron, 37.5 years young, which translated into NFL terms means these guys are closer to checking in at Silver Acres Rest Home than raising a silver trophy. Truth be told, the Super Bowl is now the MIT, the Mahomes Invitational Tournament, and he's 8.5 years younger than the rest of the pack. The man's been big game hunting 4 of 6 seasons as a starter in the league, and he's won 3 times. A decade ago, there were 8 starting NFL quarterbacks with the title. Both Mannings, Big Ben, Breeze, Rodgers, Brady, Flacco, and Wilson. Question now is, who will rise up to challenge Mahomes and prevent him from claiming an unprecedented 3rd straight Super Bowl? The answer may just lie in that classic combo of coach and quarterback.
I don't think I'd be the quarterback that I am if I didn't have Coach Reed being my head coach.
The Chiefs have theirs. We've seen Brady and Bill, Montana and Walsh. The only other duo still standing who have accomplished glory together, tonight's picturesque pair of Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, who tackled their title-seeking quest the first time around 3 seasons ago. Outside of Mahomes, Stafford is the 2nd youngest of the Super Bowl winners still standing. And McVay, his head coach, is younger than Rodgers and Flacco.
Sean does an unbelievable job of connecting with all of us as players, leading the way. We follow his lead, and we're here now.
So can this California coalition dethrone the Kansas City couple? LA is getting healthy. LA is in the playoff conversation and in a good spot tonight to grab victory by the horns.
Emerson, don't ever change. Here's a look at the current odds for each of those past Super Bowl quarterback champs. To grab another one, as you might imagine, Patrick Mahomes is at the top, and they're going for potentially the first 3-peat in Super Bowl history, which is why the game is called the Patrick Mahomes Invitational, Claudia.
Yeah, because somehow they show no signs of slowing down, Trey. Here's a next-gen look at the dramatic blocked field goal attempt against the Broncos on Sunday, securing a 16-14 victory, keeping this team somehow undefeated. It was their 15th straight win dating back to last season and 9th of 2024. And of course, somebody took the Chiefs money line right before the blocked kick, because of course they did. A live bet for $150 at 10-1 odds to win netted this better $1,650. But of course, for every victory, there is a defeat. And one poor soul, can we even call him a poor soul? Just sort of a silly soul, put $540 on Denver at minus 2,800 to win. You just don't do that. That's not a smart bet. He was going to win $20, but instead he lost $540. Now you can bet the Chiefs to complete the undefeated regular season at 6-1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And if anybody's going to do it, it's Patrick Mahomes. Who knows, if you're going to do something special like that, you need some special plays along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, man. You live for these moments. I mean, when you grow up playing football, you live for the walk-off, whatever it is. And it's special when you build these guys for so long, and you've built this chemistry with them, and guys get to make that play. It's something that I'm sure Leo will have for the rest of his life.
Although the Broncos lost, they did cover as a 7.5-point dog, and it was a huge week for dogs in general. After favorites went 14-1 straight up and 10-5 against the spread in Week 9, the dogs barked back. They went 5-8 straight up, 10-3 against the spread in Week 10. And when you look at overall numbers for the season, this is interesting. That one Week 10 performance from the dogs brought things closer to even in terms of dogs and favorite success this season, Trey.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, when you look at some of those numbers from the Chiefs, right? Because everyone still looks at, where's this explosive offense for the Chiefs like we haven't seen the last couple of years? There's a couple of numbers that you need to consider, okay? Nobody has more 10-play touchdown drives than the Kansas City Chiefs, who have 12 of them this season. Nobody is better on third down conversion this season than the Kansas City Chiefs, over 53%. And their time of possession is in the top 5. So they're just doing it a different way. Right. They know they have a great defense. So even if they don't score a bunch of points, as long as they possess the ball, it gives that defense a chance to rest and come up with a special play like Leo Chenal did, blocking that field goal.
And they continue to add more talent, which just makes them even better and really not fair for the rest of the league.
That's the weird part. We'll get into that a little bit back with Marshall Newhouse with us again. I mean, like, we're talking about this Kansas City team, 9-0, last unbeaten team. Me personally, Marshall, I don't think they really care about the unbeaten season. I think if they get it, fine. I think they're looking at the bigger picture, which is what do we need to do to be the first three-peat champion in Super Bowl history. But that undefeated season could come to an end this Sunday because they're taking on a Buffalo team that is playing really well, and it's up in Buffalo. And these two teams know they're going to see each other again in the playoffs. So this might be the place where they stumble.
Yeah, I think they ultimately are in research mode. I mean, they're trying to stay healthy, but they're dinking and dunking. Andy Reid's taking in all this, how teams are trying to affect them, they're trying to affect Pat, how they're trying to attack Spags, and they're still winning, but all they're doing is taking notes, just calmly writing it up on the board. All right, if we see this team in the playoffs, this is how they're going to attack us. And yeah, I think they don't care as much about undefeated as just being ready to make a run. And Buffalo seems to be one of the teams that can challenge that. But to me, it's Baltimore. Baltimore has the run game that ultimately, even if their defense, Baltimore's defense is being, deficient right now. But if you can stay on the field, that is as much of a threat to Pat Mahomes as him being on the field against a good defense. Keeping them on the sidelines, running with Derrick Henry in frigid temperatures. It's going to be frigid whether you're in Buffalo, whether you're in Kansas City, whether you're in Baltimore. It's going to be cold, and tackling Derrick Henry is already hard enough. And so they understand that. And I think that is going to be a hellacious matchup for Kansas City. But yeah, give me Buffalo, Baltimore, and maybe a shadow team that we'll talk about later.
Well, you mentioned two of the top three when it comes to the odds for the Super Bowl at the DraftKings Sportsbook. The Chiefs are the favorite, Ravens at 6-1, but wedged in between them, the Detroit Lions. Only plus 450, 50 cents difference between them and the Chiefs. And they got the win. It wasn't pretty, but they got the win over the Texans despite 5 interceptions from Jared Goff. So now they're 8-1 for the first time, Marshall, since 1954. Their 7th straight win overall. What do you make of this team, and how much do you like their odds of winning a Super Bowl this season?
Listen, that was the game. If you're going to lose, you're going to lose on primetime. That's the one. Jared Goff looked just befuddled on the sideline, one of those, just bewildered looks in his eyes after throwing 5 picks. But the fact that they even remained close in that game and found a way to win tells me everything I need to know about them. They're absolutely primed to go on a run and try to win a Super Bowl. I love what they've done with Dan Campbell. The team is just so resilient. They've got so many ways to beat you. I mean, the coup of the offseason was retaining Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator. He's one of the best callers in the game. He'll get to write a blank check for a head coaching gig this offseason. But that continuity and his creativity, I mean, he's had multiple 2-point conversions, 4th down conversions that look like trick plays to us, but he's like, I got more in the bag. There's more where that came from. And so I think they have a lot that they haven't shown. You need Jared Goff to play a better game than they played, but the fact that they were able to eke it out tells me a lot about that team.
Listen, if we're being honest about it, the way the Chiefs have gone about it and the way the Lions have gone about it this season is very similar. They do not care who gets what. They just want to make sure that someone makes a winning play to get it done. And that's certainly what we saw in that game Sunday night in Houston. Down 23-7 at the half. They shut them out in the second half, and the defense comes up with a couple of plays to save their quarterback. It really was remarkable. So if the Chiefs and the Lions, as you mentioned, some of these other teams, Baltimore and Buffalo, are the really good, let's get to the bad and the ugly. And that would be the Jets and the Cowboys. We can throw the Bears in there later for a separate discussion, but that really is a different dynamic. Which team right now is in worse shape, in your opinion? Is it the Cowboys, whose season is over, their quarterback's on injured reserve, and they go into next season with 46% of their cap going to 2 players, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb? Or is it the Jets, who got eviscerated by a young, faster, stronger, athletic Arizona team that have ceded control of their franchise to a 41-year-old quarterback who is playing like it? They have a coaching staff who admitted after the game, we weren't prepared to play, and they have about 30 players on an expiring contract. Which situation is worse?
Listen, I told the Gogs this morning that I'd rather starve than eat either one of those bad meals. But the Jets right now are, listen, if we're talking future, prospects, I don't know what they have to look forward to, because Aaron at any moment can decide he's done. He can go do what he'd like to do. Do they have a young quarterback? Yeah. Do they have a young quarterback who they can be like, all right, maybe we can see what we have here? Do they have optimal draft position? Do they have depth at any position right now that aren't on expiring contracts? No. The cupboard is bare. The head coach is gone. They're not going to hire Ulbrich. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's ready for this head coaching position. They feel as rudderless as I can remember a team feeling. We know what Jerry is. We know that they have a ceiling because it's still always going to be the Jerry show. He's the one that's driven the valuation of the franchise. He ultimately, I believe, cares more about that than winning, despite what he says.
Correct.
But they at least have a quarterback. They have a star player, and they have a good draft infrastructure. They draft very, very well in Dallas. And so I have more faith in them, at least playing winning football and having a winning formula, than the Jets. I don't know where the Jets turn to after this. They've mortgaged so much of their future for a run that they thought was going to happen, where now they're losing 6 points to the Cardinals. It doesn't make sense. I don't know how you have faith in the Jets fan, but of course you're probably used to that.
Well, it's consistent. We'll give them that. Let's follow up on Dallas real quickly here. A lot of people are really upset with what Micah Parsons said after the game, basically saying, first of all, he was asked a question about his head coach. And first thing he said out of his mouth, which no one refers to, is, well, that's above my pay grade. And then he went on to say, I'm more concerned about guys like Zach Martin. Mike McCarthy might go somewhere else and coach again. And people have been ripping him for this. I think these comments were taken a little out of context here.
Listen, I get why people can see that as maybe a backhanded compliment to Mike. Not even a compliment, just kind of like something that was very sneaky on the back end of that comment. But I also do think he believes, in helping some of these veterans who've carried Cowboys tradition and culture for so long. Zach Martin's going to be a Hall of Famer. You can see his body breaking down. He doesn't look like the same guy. And I agree. I feel for him and guys of that caliber. But it does feel like you could have said that without even saying your head coach's name involved in there at all. And so, our guy Damian Woody is talking about him being more of a presence in podcast than he is on the field. And to somewhat degree, I agree. But listen, there's ways to tactfully talk about the things that are going on in your locker room without feeling like you're throwing people under the bus. There just wasn't a need for it. But I think people kind of are blowing out of proportion.
Yeah, they saw something and were like, oh, attack mode. And then Micah sort of talked it back on his podcast. And that's one of the problems people have with him. He's like, yeah, let's talk about it on my podcast. So that's some of the issue as well.
Get your second contract as good as you are. Get to the second one and then do whatever you want. Like, exactly. I just don't understand on the rookie deal. Like, you've got other stuff going on.
All right, Marshall, we appreciate it. When we come back, We'll give you everything else we can get into this show via a segment we like to call the Data Dump, including a horrible harbinger for Miami tonight. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
Welcome back to Pregame Power Up, presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Here's a look at who bettors like to score tonight. Kyren Williams, no surprise. He's at the top. He has his shortest odds, though, of the season tonight. He's scored at least one touchdown in each of his last 8 home games, priced at minus 220. You got to risk 220 to win 100. Tyreek Hill, who officially will play tonight, has scored at least one touchdown in each of his 4 previous games at SoFi. For more on how people are betting this one tonight, here's DKN social media correspondent Megan Townsley.
We've got one more game to round out NFL Week 10, and that's the Dolphins versus the Rams. I think it's going to be a good one. We've got some high-powered offensive weapons, and I think the people in the DraftKings Sportsbook betting group would agree. So I found some of my favorite picks, kicking it off with the Barstool betting group. We're going to stay here today where Chris Clemmer, he's loving Devon Achane. That's his boy. He's taking him as an anytime touchdown scorer first, and then in a separate straight-up pick, he's liking over 57.5 rushing yards. And one of my favorite things about these betting groups is that he had 19 people tail the bet, but also a couple people were laughing at it. You can use emojis to respond. Okay, but Megan making money, she also got a similar response. She's backing the Fins by taking +3 spread alternate. Had some more people throwing some laughing emojis on those, but hey, Megan, I'm backing you too. There's 3 other people tailing this bet, and if you want to see what she's posted and maybe tail the bet, go ahead and open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click on the social tab at the top, and then hit betting groups. And if you're not sure who to bet on, what to bet on, or you just want to see some more examples in these groups, head to dknetwork.com. You'll find tons of information there, and then head back to these groups because I'm telling you, there's some fun stuff in here today.
All right, Megan, thanks. Speaking of fun stuff, you know, this is such a nice, tight 60-minute show. We have so much information. We can't get it all in there, so that's why we give you what we can, what we call the data dump right now. Let's start about the Rams. The Rams, we saw them take care of the Seahawks in overtime last week, 26-20, and that could be an issue tonight. Teams that played in overtime the previous week are 107 and 140 in their next game for a winning percentage of 43%. The struggle against the spread as well. They struggle against the spread as well, covering the spread at just 44% of the time, but they do get the extra game with a Monday night here.
Another interesting nugget for you. When you look at Miami tonight, the Dolphins have struggled in the game after they play the Bills. Okay, this is very specific. Under Mike McDaniel, Miami is 1-4 straight up and against the spread in the next game after facing Buffalo, failing to cover the spread by more than 9 points.
Well, more bad news for Miami. Not a single Florida team won a football game this weekend, college or pro. This courtesy of Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press. Fantastic stuff. Florida teams in the FBS, FCS, and NFL are a combined 0-11 on the same weekend for the first time that we've ever been able to track this kind of stuff. So only the Dolphins can save the entire Sunshine State right now.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is.
Here are some more trends that we missed. The Dolphins have failed to cover the spread. More bad news. In 9 of their last 11 games, McVay and Stafford have been great as favorites, not so much as dogs. 26-8 straight up as favorites and just 6-14 as dogs. Each of the Rams' last 4 Monday games have gone under the total points line. And in each of the Rams' last 4 home games, their opponents have scored first, and that is a prop that you can bet tonight at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Miami even money to score first, Trey.
All right, so we'll see what happens. Something else to keep in mind here. The Rams with getting their players back, right? We saw what happened when I always want to say Puka Nacua. That's never right.
That's not his name.
Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. But imagine if there was a player named Cooper Nacua. Like, that would be all time.
And it was them combined?
Yes, that would be the greatest fantasy team name of all time. Keep this in mind. The Rams scored 25 or more points in each of their last 2 games, week 8 and 9. They scored 25 or more in only one of their first 6 games without all those players. So it's like if you have better players, you play better. It's a wild concept.
And it does make it betting those players tough as well, because you never know who's going to see the targets.
Well, it's like the running backs when Brady and Belichick were there. Is it White? Is it, they had so many of them.
That's what you call an embarrassment of riches.
Exactly right. So we'll see what happens tonight. Enjoy the game. It's the Rams and the Dolphins. For Claudia Bellafato, for Marshall Newhouse and Emerson Latzia, I'm Trey Wingo. Thanks for watching the Pregame PowerUp right here on DraftKings Network. We'll be here all season long and through the entire postseason, all the way through Super Bowl Sunday.